My name is Maria, and this is my story. I was born in Honduras to missionary parents and moved to the United States when I was 3. As a kid, we moved around a lot, never staying in one place for more than a couple years. I think that because of that, I had a hard time making deep connections with people. I grew up knowing who God was and all the Bible stories that every kid grows up with. I was about 7 years old when I accepted Christ into my life. It was such an overwhelming feeling. As I grew up, living in Maryland at the time, I didn't see my relationship with God growing. I didn't really grow up with the Christians my age, and I think that it had a huge impact in my life. A couple of weeks before school started, I found out that my camp counselor had moved to another state. When I found out, I cried in my shower all night and felt like my world had fallen apart. Looking back, I think it's crazy that I put my trust in someone instead of God. Senior year, it all really went downhill. I fell into deep depression. I could care less about my grades. I didn't get the internship that I wanted. Nothing was going how it was supposed to. I ended up getting an internship at a preschool with a girl named Tori. We had classes together and knew each other since middle school. She offered to give me a ride, and we became the unlikeliest of friends. Although things with friendships started looking up, depression and anxiety still filled my life. My grades were still suffering, and it was a literal miracle that I graduated high school. I ended up going to community college, which wasn't really what I wanted to do. I started making awful decisions with my life. I was in unholy relationships that I obviously shouldn't have been in. Emotionally, they affected me because they just left me numb. I continued to struggle with anxiety and depression without anyone really knowing. Sometimes it was physically impossible to do anything, and I really had no motivation. I always wanted to make people laugh and just put on a mask and say I'm okay. Throughout this time, I only ever went to God when I needed something. My relationship with Him was non-existent. One day, my best friend was dropping me off at my house, and as I was getting out of the car, the song Oceans by Hillsong started playing. I was confused because Tori wasn't a Christian, and then I explained to her what the song meant. She had no idea what it was about, but she liked it. My friends knew I was a Christian, but I obviously didn't live a life that showed it. I don't exactly remember how we got to this point, but I invited Tori to a local church, and I somehow convinced her to go. I believe the moment that she walked in to that church, she was touched. We kept going back week after week. She started asking me questions and teaching me things that I should be teaching her. I was the one that grew up in the Christian home and thought this was totally backwards. I think that made me realize that I needed to get back to Jesus. She was such a great part of me regaining my relationship with Christ. Growing up, I had always longed for the best friend, just like everyone else had, and He finally gave me that. Her growing faith helped me to grow mine. I was even able to be part of her baptism. At this point in my life, I found out that I was moving again. It impacted me so much, and it was hard to tell my friends. All I could think of was why. We joined a growth group with Tori at her church, and we met people that were part of Cru. We decided to check it out. We learned about Winter Conference, and we decided we had to go, even without knowing anyone. Winter Conference was such a push in my spiritual life. I really started to understand God's grace instead of always fearing condemnation. We continued to go to Cru, and then Big Break came around and decided to go, with again, not really knowing anyone, but 2 people. Big Break was such a life-changing experience. It was the first time I shared my faith and my testimony. It gave me the Christian friends that I always wanted. One specific moment that I remember was walking down the beach with my friend Eric, and he decided to go talk to a lady. He walks up to her and she says she couldn't speak English, so then he looks at me. There was no way I could leave this lady when I had the opportunity to speak to her about God in Spanish. God really showed me His sense of humor through that. It was hard to make such strong connections with people, but then realized that I was moving in 2 months. So what was the point? That didn't stop them from becoming such influential and supportive people in my life. Until this day, even after moving, they've become my family. But at this point, I was mad at God. I was mad that He had given me these friendships that I always wanted, and it was all going to be gone in a few months. I just wanted to know what the purpose of it was. And as I thought about it, I came to the conclusion that God gave me Tori, and then He gave us friends, so that when I moved, she wouldn't have to grow in her faith alone. And after all she had done for me, I couldn't thank God for letting me be that person for her. Although my spiritual life was growing and my relationship with God was mending, I still went through slight moments of depression and anxiety. It came to the point that I blew up on one of my friends for commenting on something that they had no idea I had trouble with. And then I had to tell them what I really dealt with. My depression is no surprise to God, and it doesn't cancel His purpose for my life. I've learned that I'm not my struggles. I'm still who God says I am. It doesn't make me less of a person. I'm just as valuable, and my story isn't over, and neither is yours.